Let's get it moving and grooving.
So I did have a really time hard consensual? No. There was a consensus? What is the word I'm looking for? You truly do find out near the end of the book exactly why it is so secretive. Obviously, that is normally how books work. Like, what an idiot. Hello book lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steph, and today's video we will be doing my favorite books of all time. So these books are going to be in no particular order. I am just going to pick them up as they are sitting on my floor, and I also had a very hard time narrowing everything down, so I did want to start with just some honorable mentions that I will briefly talk about. So I will timestamp down below the honorable mentions, and then you can get into the video. Again, in no order, not ranked at all. These are just the books that I literally wish if someone came down and said, like, give me your soul and you can read these again, I would be like, yes please bitch, take my soul, I want to read these again for the first time. And also, little spoiler alert, I am wearing a sweater that I got custom made, and a lot of the book titles are actually on these books here, so if you can read that, then spoiler alert, these will be mentioned. So the first honorable mention is one of the books that I first read when I started watching BookTube, and it is an oldie, but it like literally still resonates with me so much, and that is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This novel is essentially about our main character who is trying to solve this mystery about a billionaire, and there is like prize money that's at stake. But this book really hits because it deals with so much more than just what the mystery is, and our main character is struggling so much, and you kind of get to get into her head, and you really get to see like her inner battle with like mental health. And this book just hit so close to home, and it just dealt with mental health in such a good way, I found, and I just loved it so much. I would love to reread this one day to see if it still lives up, but yeah, this is going to be my first honorable mention. My next honorable mention is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This is a duology, but I believe that there may be another book coming in the duology. I have read both, and I definitely prefer Vicious to Vengeful, which is the sequel. This is essentially a fantasy. It is like superheroes. We are following our main characters, Victor and Eli, as they become like extraordinaries and get all of these powers, and they are trying to like figure out how to become extraordinaries. It is just one of those books where all of the characters are morally gray, and you don't really know who you're supposed to be rooting for, and you kind of want to root for everyone and no one at the same time. It's just a very dark book, and a lot happens, and it literally keeps you engaged the entire time. The chapters are really short, and I highly recommend this. The next honorable mention is The Way I Used to Be. Now, I don't want to really tell you much about this book. I will just say that this is like a YA contemporary book. It follows our main character in 4 parts in this book, which go through the 4 years that she is attending high school, and it does say on the back what happens, but I'm not going to like say that out loud. Read trigger warnings if you do want to figure that out and read the synopsis of this book. I just remember this book being so extremely powerful, and it is really hyped, so I didn't think that I would like it as much as I did, but I really enjoyed it. This packed such a powerful punch, and I still think about this book to this day. And again, I really liked how it was told, as we are following our main character through 4 parts in this book, each part being a different year in her life. I know that this will not be for everybody, especially with the subject matter that is in this book, but I highly recommend it if you are looking for a hard-hitting YA contemporary. The next honorable mention I have is A Dowry of Blood. I read this for the book club that I actually used to have on BookTube, and I believe that every single one of my friends in the book club loved this as well. This was one of the only books that we all agreed was, I think, higher than a 4-star. Like, we all absolutely loved this book, and this is a reimagining of Dracula's Bride, and it is so well done. The writing is absolutely stunning in this, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something that's short. I think that it's under like 300 pages. Yeah, it's just over 200 pages, so it's super short. You can read it in a couple of sittings, and I highly recommend it. It was phenomenal. And the last honorable mention that I have is going to be Shark Heart by Emily Haybeck. This is a like romance. It is a love story, but it is told with like magical realism. So nobody is more shocked to see this book on an honorable mention than me, because I truly just do not like magical realism, but the way that this was done was so good. It was so heartbreaking. This is essentially a love story between a woman and a man, and the man in this story ends up finding out that he has like a genetic disease that makes him turn into a shark, essentially. And we get to follow kind of their love story, the process of how all of that takes place. And this book also holds just such a very special place in my heart, because I actually went into labor with my daughter while reading this book, and I will never forget that moment ever. So I truly, truly love this book. I think everybody should read it, even if you do not like magical realism, and this will forever be a favorite of mine, just because I do have such like a fond memory of reading it. So now we are going to get into my actual list. Like I said, these are going to be in no particular order, and I have 15 books to talk about, so I will try to make this snappy. The first book I want to talk about is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. This is a historical fiction. It is circa like 1942. We are following our main character, Eva, and she is living in Paris, but has to flee Paris because of the arrest of her father. And she essentially goes to like a free zone. And while in this free zone, she starts to forge documents for Jewish children in order for them to be able to flee to Switzerland. And in doing so, she has to forge their names as well. She makes it her mission to write all of their real names down in this book of lost names so that the children never forget their true identity. This book is super heartbreaking. I am not the biggest historical fiction fan, but when I do read a historical fiction that is written well, they really do become some of my all-time favorite books, and this is one of the best historical fictions I have ever read, so I highly, highly recommend this one. Then very quickly, I am going to talk about the series that got me into reading, because I couldn't make a video about my all-time favorite books without mentioning this, and I will do it very quickly because we all know what this series is about, but that is the Harry Potter series. So these are books 1 through 7. Like I mentioned, this is the series that actually got me into reading. This is the series that I credit to my love for reading. I will always hold a special place in my heart for the Harry Potter books. I absolutely love them. I will be doing a reread of them shortly because they are just the most feel-good books ever, and I absolutely love the Harry Potter series, so I couldn't talk about my all-time favorite books without talking about the series that made me love reading. The next book that I have here is a thriller by one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is a thriller in which we are following our main character, Jules, and Jules in this book, she takes on a job where she has to apartment sit at a Manhattan apartment called the Bartholomew. The Bartholomew is very secretive. Not a lot of people talk about it. Not a lot of people know like what's going on in the Bartholomew. So we are basically following her as she uncovers all of these secrets from the Bartholomew, and this book is either going to work or not work for you. And I know that a lot of people can say that about any book, but this truly has like a twist at the end where you are either going to love it and be on board, which I obviously was. This is my favorite Riley Sager and one of my all-time favorite thrillers. I absolutely love this book. Or the ending is just going to leave like a very bad taste in your mouth and you're not going to like it. But either way, I think that this book is worth picking up. The next book that I have to talk about is one that I recently read and it has become an all-time favorite, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is a YA fantasy. It's a romance. It's like enemies to lovers. So in this, we are following our main character, Iris, and her brother has gone off to fight for the gods, and she is working at a paper called the Oath Gazette, and that is where she meets Rowan, who is the love interest in this book. And during their time there, they are both trying to get this promotion to become like the main writer at this Oath Gazette. And then Iris does have a magical typewriter, and a lot of things start happening with letters and this magical typewriter. And then the story takes kind of like a completely different turn and it shifts into something like completely different, but it works so well in this story. I loved this book so much. I literally cannot stop thinking about it. I would love to reread it. I literally had to buy this copy because I didn't like the like Canadian covers that it came with. So this is the UK cover. I didn't love the sequel as much, but I highly recommend at least picking up book 1. The next book I have to talk about is actually a memoir, and that is going to be Out of the Shadows by Tamia Nagy. Now, this is a memoir that does take place in the city that is very close by to me. This takes place in the same province as me, and I know pretty much like exactly all of the places that they are talking about in this book. So it definitely hits home a lot more than some other memoirs that I have read. We are essentially following this author, and it's her story about how she immigrated from Hungary to Canada, and she thought that she was going to be getting a babysitter job, but she really quickly finds out that she actually gets roped into like human trafficking, and it is her heartbreaking story. It is very hard to read. If you are looking for a memoir and that sounds interesting to you, I could not recommend this enough. One of my really good friends actually recommended I pick this up, and we always kind of have this running joke that she always tries to get me to read like memoirs and like these books that I'm never going to like, but I truly fell in love with this book and I highly recommend it. I do think that it holds a special place in my heart just based on the like proximity of where everything took place, but yeah, highly recommend. The next book I have to talk about is one that I also read semi-recently as well, and that is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. This book is on this list because I read this book at the exact time that I needed to. I can't explain it. I literally like saw this book on my shelves one day and I said like, yep, I want to pick that up. I need to read that. And I read this at the perfect time. The messages in here, the things that were written in this book literally just spoke to me. I'm not going to give you too much of a synopsis on this. Just know that we are following our main character, Ove, who is described as a like very grumpy old man. You get to kind of follow what he is doing now in his life, but also kind of what led him to that place. And you get to kind of see his past life as well and get snippets of like everything that's happened in his life to make him the way that he is. I again cannot tell you like how much this book just spoke to me, and there's so many quotes in here that were just exactly what I needed to hear at that exact time in my life. And as you can see, I do have it tabbed quite a bit, and I absolutely loved this. I cannot recommend this enough. Frederick Bachman has become a like new favorite author for me. The next book I have to talk about, again, another author that in my eyes can do no wrong, and that is Kristen Hanna. And this book specifically is The Great Alone, which is my favorite Kristen Hanna I think I've read to date. This is a historical fiction in which we are following our main character, Ernst, who is a prisoner of war. He is coming back from the war, and he decides that when he does so, he is going to move his family and they are going to move to Alaska. So we are following him, his wife, and their daughter and their life in Alaska. And as you can tell, Kristen Hanna, she's always got very hard-hitting books. So this book is no different. It packs a intense punch. It really just guts you. It makes you feel so many different emotions. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you are looking for a historical fiction, this is definitely my favorite Kristen Hanna. The next book I have to talk about is probably pretty controversial, but I will say that I did read this before this author got all of the hype, before everybody was reading her books. I definitely read this before all of that, but even if I hadn't, this book would still stick with me and I would think about it all the time, and that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. So this book is like a psychological thriller. I don't know if it's classified with like a little bit of romance in here. I'm not really sure what the classification is, but it's definitely like not like anything else that Colleen Hoover has ever written. And it is a pretty messed up book, so if you don't like messed up, I definitely wouldn't suggest picking this up. But in this, we are essentially following our main character, Lowen, who gets hired by a character named Jeremy to essentially finish his wife's book series, and his wife is injured and cannot finish the book series, so he hires Lowen in order to be able to finish that book series. And that's kind of all I want to say about this book. If you are interested in picking up any Colleen Hoover, this is again very different than anything she's ever written, but if you haven't enjoyed anything from her in the past, this might be a good place to kind of like redirect your attention to, because it is again so different than anything she has written before. The next book I have to talk about is one that surprises me just because of the genre that it is, but that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Andy Weir, I have found, is one of those authors that makes a very hard genre, aka sci-fi, very easy and accessible to people who don't typically read the genre. So his other book, The Martian, and then this one, very, very easy for someone who doesn't read sci-fi. Yes, there are a lot of like scientifical elements to this book, but it doesn't diminish your enjoyment of it. This is an adult sci-fi. We are following our main character, Ryland Grace, and Ryland is basically tasked with saving humanity, and he is basically the only person that is able to do so, and he's sent on this mission to save humanity, and if he fails, then we all die, essentially. There is this character in here, like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is one of my all-time favorite characters ever. Ryland Grace, super great character as well, but there is another character in here, oh my god, just holds such a special place in my heart. I love them to bits. So yeah, if you are looking for a sci-fi that is very easily accessible, then I would highly recommend this. I still think about this story till this day and also want to reread this soon. The next book I have here is another historical fiction. Again, when I find a historical fiction that I love, like I truly, truly love it, and that is The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. This is such a unique story, and I don't want to tell you too much about it, but we are essentially following main character who we are following through the 1970s, and she learns that she is pregnant with a baby girl and that her baby girl has a heart defect that she will not be able to live with. So she is trying to figure out how she can help her like baby girl for when she is born, and then her brother-in-law comes to her and basically tells her that he has a way that she is going to be able to save her daughter. And we are basically following the story of how her brother-in-law, who is a physicist, is going to attempt to save her daughter, and there is a time traveling element in this book, and it is just so well done. Time travel is one of those things that I love reading about in books, along with like parallel universes. Those are just like two things that I absolutely love. So if you do have any recommendations for like parallel universes, time travel, anything like that, leave them down below, because I'm always interested in that. And yeah, this book has just stuck with me for so long, and I highly recommend this if that sounds interesting to you. Then I have another from one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is Stephen King, and this is my favorite Stephen King, which is 11/22/63. This again is one that is so different from anything else that Stephen King has written. So if you have read from Stephen King before and he's just like not your jam, it's not really like your thing, I would still try and give this a shot. I know that it is a very big book that is like classic Stephen King, but this is just so different from anything that Stephen King has written. Like, there is even like a love story in here, basically following our main character who learns of this diner that takes you to a different time, and the owner of this diner enlists our main character to try and stop the assassination of President Kennedy. So again, time travel, very different, so much going on in this book, but this was such a good audiobook to listen to. Again, one of my favorite all-time Stephen King books, and I highly recommend even if Stephen King is not your jam. The next book I have to talk about, I am going to keep like very brief, very vague, because I think that this is the best way to go into it. And if you know this author at all, you know that this is exactly like what they want going into their book. And that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This book is incredible. It is so short, but it packs such a punch. I don't want to tell you too much. We are following our main character who is basically going on a road trip with her boyfriend. And if you have watched the Netflix movie on this, I would still highly recommend reading the book, because the book just is so much better. You get like an actual like in-depth into exactly what our main characters are feeling. It is amazing. Again, I don't want to say too much. It is one of the like weirdest books I've ever read, but I had the best time with it and I cannot wait to reread this book. If the angle changed and I look different, it's because like I literally already changed and then realized I forgot to talk about 2 books. So that's where we're at right now. So the next book I want to talk about is Rust and Stardust by T. Greenwood. This is another that like I never would have picked up had it not been for my channel, and a subscriber actually recommended that I read this and I fell absolutely in love with this book. I cannot stop recommending this book enough. This is another historical fiction where we are following an 11-year-old girl who steals a notebook from a store, and then a 52-year-old man named Frank LaSalle convinces this little girl that he is like working with the FBI, and if she doesn't do what he tells her to do, then he is going to get her into like a lot of trouble. He is going to get her family into trouble. He basically just like grooms her and convinces her of all of these things that are actually not true. And this book was super hard hitting. It is a book that I think about a lot till this day, and I really want to get a physical copy of this book. And the thing I have to talk about is a lot different than any other book that I have talked about, and that is going to be Fragments of Horror by Junji Ito. This book was literally everything when I read it. I did like a 24-hour readathon on my channel previously, and I had only been reading like graphic novels, mangas, everything like that, and this book got randomly selected in that video for me to read, and I quickly fell in love with Junji Ito. This is by far my favorite that I have read by him. It is horror manga, and the stories in this were just so creepy. The artwork was phenomenal. I can't stop thinking about it. There are just some parts that I was literally cringing, and if you are looking for a horror manga, I cannot recommend this enough. The, again, artwork just has like this creepy factor to it, and this is by far the best thing that Junji Ito has written, in my opinion. And yeah, this is just a collection of different mangas, and it is so good. Again, I definitely want to be purchasing this for my collection. The last book that I have to talk to you all about, I'm sure you can guess because you haven't heard me talking about it, and it is literally in my profile picture, and that is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This book took me completely by surprise. I did not know that I was going to love this book as much as I did. This is like a psychological thriller. It's got, again, parallel universe elements to it, so it's got very like sci-fi elements, but it is just so easy to digest this book. It keeps you on the edge of your toes. It is just incredible. And fun fact, I just found out that Apple TV is actually coming out with like a TV show for this book, so I am so excited. I cannot wait to watch that. In this, we are following our main character, Jason, and Jason goes out one night. He does have a wife and a son, and he goes out one night and then he gets like abducted and knocked out, and when he wakes up, he is very disoriented, and he realizes that when he kind of like goes back to his old life, that his wife doesn't even remember him and his son doesn't exist. So the novel is basically him trying to figure out like what happened, and it is just so incredible. It takes you on such a wild ride. I can't recommend this enough. If anyone is looking for like one book recommendation from me, I always recommend this because it has like sci-fi elements, it's got thriller, it's just one of those books that you just cannot put down. You constantly just keep flipping the page wanting to know what happens next, and I loved the ending of this book, and I cannot wait to watch the series that just came out on Apple TV. That is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys all got some very good recommendations from me. If not, I hope that you guys at least got like a taste for the kind of books that I enjoy. I do have like a very wide range of books that I enjoy. I am not just like one type of genre girly. I love all types of genres, which I think is very beneficial to this channel. Let me know down below in the comments what some of your favorite books are. If you did make it to the end of this video, let me know by putting any type of heart emoji down below in the comments, just to symbolize like your favorite book, your love for books, all of that. If you did like today's video, please let me know by hitting that like button on the video. And also, if you are new here, I would love to have you stick around. So please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all in my next video. Bye!